Well, hello and welcome to all of the ups and downs for House of the Dragon Season 1 Episode 4, King of the Narrow Sea. I am Sean Ferrick for What Culture. I'm filming this at bloody 5 in the morning, and as the saying goes, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So go on, as long as it's safe, grab a drink and join us for all the ups and downs for House of the Dragon. And the episode opens with Rhaenyra trying to meet a suitor that she likes. As you recall, I had a bit of an issue with Millie Alcock last week. I will be very, very fair and say anytime generally I've got an issue with the performance, I tend to look to the directors. And, with all the love in my body, I tend to look to them and go come on, you weren't that strapped for time. And so therefore, episode 3 of House of the Dragon, when I thought Millie Alcock left us wanting, I would be like, oh, come on, folks, come on, you can do better. And you know what? They did. She is brilliant in this episode. Millie Alcock is probably one of the strongest parts of this episode. So my first up of this episode goes to the entire scene where she is meeting all of the various suitors that are lining up to marry her. Now, she is in complete control of this entire scene, up to the point where she meets one of the Blackwoods. We can assume that this is taking place in Storm's End. Why? Because the man sitting to her right is wearing the Baratheon sigil, and also the rather stupid vocal man is also wearing a Baratheon sigil. And when one of the Blackwoods, who happens to be a child of maybe 12 or 13, goes up to her and he makes a, I would say, bloody decent marriage proposal. Of all of the marriage proposals that I have made, I would say his is certainly one of them. He stands up and he gives a good speech, and then, the Baratheons kind of make out of him, really. And Rhaenyra decides, look, I've had enough of this, because she has had to put up with, weeks of this. And so she starts to go, she starts to walk. One of the Baratheons kind of slags off the Blackwoods, and, little kid Blackwood bloody eviscerates one of the Baratheons. I was like, listen, the Baratheons have really not done very well in George R.R. Martin's stories, have they? And it was excellent. Not just because we saw a kid eviscerate a grown-up, but because we saw a world where the young triumphed over the older. And that's really what's being set up with Rhaenyra here. So this entire scene, for me, was an up. Now, I really wanted to start with that because I have to come in with a down fairly quickly here, and that is, if you think of last week, and I know I was quite harsh last week with how it ended, the entire internet, as it seemed to love, Daemon's story and the victory over the crab feeder, who I named the Crab King for about 7 years. And, they thought it was a really great scene. I didn't think that it was awful. I thought, it looked fantastic, and I was delighted that Daemon Targaryen had a save point somewhere in the scene. But what I thought as well is that, great, here comes the Velaryons. We've got Sea Smoke, I made a point of it last week. We've got Laenor Velaryon, we've got Cordis Velaryon, and nothing. Literally nothing of them this week. And that's why it's a down from me. Time has passed by between last week and this week, as will be a theme in House of the Dragon. And I have to say, this week it hurts the show, because we get allusions to the fact that Cordis Velaryon has sort of taken up the mantle of the crab feeder. He is the sea snake and has been ever since, but he's presented as a threat. And although we see Daemon come home, the sea snake is pretty much presented as not a friend of the crown. And that, to me, I will come back to this again, but for me, the lack of Velaryons is a flump. Particularly because although We know from paying real close attention that Laenor Velaryon is the son of a Targaryen. Rhaenys Targaryen is his mother. It really felt like it came seriously out of the blue last week, and I would have liked a bit of a follow-up for that this week, and we just didn't get it. So for me, the lack of Velaryons, that's a down. One of the points that I made last week was the fact that Paddy Considine to Viserys is pretty much our go-to when it comes to the passage of time in Westeros. And actually, at the risk of repeating myself, that's an up again, because this week we actually get that sense of this sort of lethargic Viserys of last week seems to have passed on. Now we get a somewhat more insistent, a somewhat more urgent, a somewhat more kingly Viserys this week. Now it's evidenced in several scenes, particularly the one with Daemon, which I will come to. Paddy Considine again delivers a fantastic performance of a man who is running out of time. And I think that's the real point of Viserys, is that while he was set up in episode 1 as the king, he's the head Targaryen, he's the big cheese, since episode 1, he has been your man who is sitting on Eldar throne out there, who don't got much life left in him, eh? Paddy Considine is doing a fantastic job of portraying a decrepit, aging king. Now, skipping ahead slightly, you see it physically on his body when he is with Alicent, but really you see it in the way that he acts. He is both a powerful king and also completely broken. He is insistent and he's hesitant, and he's old, but he's trying to put across the power of young. And that, to me, is really good acting. And in fact, if I'm honest, it reminds me of Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor in Doctor Who. It's not an easy job to do, and Paddy, you've earned that up. I must be kind, but I must also be honest. As I say, there's so much good in this episode, and then Daemon Targaryen walks in, and this is not a criticism of Matt Smith. Down that wig. Now, I'm sorry if this makes me sound bad, but after 422 episodes of RuPaul's Drag Race, y'all can do better. Having said that, up. Once Daemon enters the Red Keep, you get this sense straight away of that no matter what the crimes have gone by, no matter what's happened in life, family can do no wrong. And that's why this is an up. That last week, they were almost ready to wage a war on each other. The episode obviously ended with the promise of Viserys sending help to Daemon. Daemon basically having a bit of an Eld Fanny attack and going, yeah, nah bud, playing the video game and away we got. You have the somewhat triumphant arrival home of Daemon, and it's very, very true to so many dysfunctional families of real world. You know, you walk home and for all of the mistakes that you've made, you're welcomed with open arms. I thought it was an excellent scene. I didn't feel, and I went in, I'm not gonna lie to you, I went in looking for, come on now, I wanna see frustrations here. I didn't get that. I realized everyone outside the bloodline is like, now come on. But it's quite true to life. And I felt for characters like Alicent. I felt initially for and I will come back to this, for characters like Rhaenyra, because they saw someone who was a great foe walk in and be like, sound, gives a cuddle. So again, I applaud the show for not belaboring time over that one. Gosh, I wonder if that will change. I know what I just said, but you know, you have come to this channel, which means you like the crazy nonsense I come out with, which is why when I go to a down, you will understand when I say, love all this wonderful, show don't tell. Now, one of the great crimes of, and I promise, I've done very well, I haven't mentioned season 8 of Game of Thrones up until now. I'm going to here because one of the great crimes of that season was they would tell us something happened. They didn't show us. Years have gone past. Terrible haircuts have gone past. really someone's not watched Queer Eye and lobbed a wig on a character has gone past. We have Daemon is buddies with Viserys again, and while individually I do like these things, overall they equate to we are trying to get to the crux of the story. Now, to those of you who are watching this who have read the story of the Dance of the Dragons, you might feel, like we do, a little bit of sympathy toward rushing through the story. However, we must be aware of the fact that not everybody knows the story. Yes, I know where certain characters are going to end up, but much like those who read Game of Thrones before the show came out, let's not be a big shower of dicks about it. And that extends to the people writing the scripts of these episodes. Yes, stuff has to happen, but you can't skip over character moments, and I did feel this week that was happening. So while big stuff happens, and it's a great episode, I will say it's a great episode for character moments, and I've said several times, I will come back to that, there were bits that we jumped, we galloped, we gambooled over in this episode, and that to me is a down. The whole point really of this episode is that the wonderful, the majestic, the previously non-speaking Daemon Targaryen comes in and he rocks the goddamn boat. Now this is shown in the beginning in that he pilots, flies, incentivizes Caraxes to go so close to Rhaenyra's boat that it causes a wave of destruction. And I mean, if that's not a bloody symbol for, you know, Uncle Targaryen, I mean, what is? And he flies off. This is an episode with probably the least amount of dragons since the beginning of this season. I love me some dragons. Please don't get me wrong. I was Team Targaryen from the beginning. I remain Team Targaryen now. You know, what's a bit of genocide between friends? That'll come back to haunt me. This benefited because it remembered that those donning the white wigs, they're the interesting characters. Love Drogon, love Rhaegal, love Viserion, love Caraxes, love the others. The joke is that the biggest dragon of them all, which is Caraxes in this episode, of course is Daemon, walks in and despite everything else, basically says, y'all are ruling because I'm allowing it to happen. I might not be the next in line, but by gosh, I can make myself next in line if I want to be. That, to me, that's an up. We see something very interesting here, and that is a depiction of Targaryen romance and family. And this is where potentially the episode will lose some people and it will gain some people, because what we see is uncle and niece kiss. Now, it is presented in a way that an older, experienced lover takes a younger, inexperienced lover by the hand. Now, there is this feeling of abuse of power. There is this feeling of abuse of standing. It is uncomfortable, and yet in the context of the show, it's Targaryen, which means it's probably the safest person Rhaenyra could possibly be with, which is a very strange sentence to say. And so when I say I'm upping the relationship between Daemon and Rhaenyra in this episode, you'll understand why I feel a little bit conflicted about that up. I'll be like, okay, right, what's going on here? For better or worse, they are a solid pair. And so when we get to the scene where Daemon is faced off against Viserys, which, by the way, massive up for that scene, you both understand Viserys' point and you understand Daemon's. Because Daemon, who we just saw being this hypersexual being and, you know, kind of like, what are you doing? This is your niece. This is dreadful. And that sentence shouldn't make sense. But in the context of Targaryens, there's no safer person. What a weird thing to say. Daemon proves himself, in Targaryen eyes, honourable. And Viserys, in a father's eyes, is also honourable. And when he's kicking the absolute bollocks out of Daemon, you're like, yeah, go on. Oh, yeah, go on. This entire scene is set up against a wonderful, wonderful dragon's egg, which is you have cat's paw in Viserys' belt the whole time. One draw of that blade and it's all over, as we will learn. Now, the episode does a whole Prince and the Pauper story. You know, it introduces Rhaenyra to the people of King's Landing. Daemon and his terrible, terrible wig are an introduction through King's Landing to Rhaenyra of a wider scope of the world. Honestly, I'm a little bit... The trailer for this episode, well edited, didn't have anywhere near the amount of action the episode, or the other way around, the episode didn't have anywhere near the amount of action that the trailer promised, and it was a shame. It was, from a story point of view, so much better than last week's. Better story this week, I will say that. I was missing the action, but hey, listen, you know what? Just shoot me in that bicep. Just leave me this one. This is my drinking arm. I do, however, have a great up for this week, and it's Alicent Hightower. Because of what was previously shown, I really didn't see this one coming. She was excellent this week because she portrayed better than any other character what it is to be trapped by power. With Rhaenyra, you have a parallel to Daenerys. Dany was always trapped by her birthright, so is Rhaenyra. But Dany was trapped in poverty. She couldn't do anything about it. Rhaenyra is trapped in wealth. She can't do anything about it. Alicent sort of had neither of these things. She was manipulated into the situation that she's in by her father. She is now the mother to at least 2 children by Viserys, and there is an awful scene where we see Viserys, who is obviously quite sick at this point, visibly affected by his illness, an expression of all of the sadness that she is reflecting back in her eyes. I thought she was wonderful. Horrific scene. Massive up from me. Now finally, last but not least, is that we had last week a great scene between Rhaenyra and Viserys where they seem to be somewhat equals. Time has gone by, they've both drifted apart and drifted back together again, which means Rhaenyra is able to say to her father, you know the way you have wide open eyes and you see this and you see that, and yet you can't see Otto Hightower? Up. Finally, Otto Hightower is being called out, and in fact, he is stripped of his position of Hand of the King, and I'm here for it. I had complaints last week about Rhys Ifans. You know, love the man, but I had complaints, and so seeing him stripped of his position this week, I'm here for it. I feel more respect toward Viserys for this. Now, remains to be seen where this is going. This is very much, although I really enjoyed the story, this is very much an in-between episode. I think we have one more episode left. I did think this was the last episode, but I think we have one more episode left of the current actors. So please God, we will see what's going on with Rhaenyra, what's going on with Alicent, what's going on with Otto, although I think he's staying. We'll also hopefully see better wigs. Now that's everything for our episode this week, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Please, this is a brand new series. It will die if you don't take it in your hands and walk into the fire and go, that is a joke. Please do not do that. Please just like, share, and subscribe. That's all I ask. That's all I ask. Whatever time of the day that you're watching this, please keep in mind, it was in fact 5 in the morning when I was recording this, so by all means, have a drink if it's safe to do so. You look after yourselves until I see you again. Make sure that you keep things both wibbly wobbly and make sure that you live long and prosper and, I don't know, fire and blood, I guess. You're all awesome. We'll be back next week for episode 5 of House of the Dragon. Let us know what you thought. What do you want to see in this season going forward? What are you happy with? What are you not happy with? We want to know. You can catch us over on Twitter at WhatCulture. You can catch myself at Sean Ferrick and all the various socials as well. In the meantime, you look after yourself, and whatever you do in your life, Dracarys. I mean, have a good one.